my audio on my actual computer and this computer too.
All right. And we are live. So welcome everyone to my live stream event on science communication using social media. My name is Imari. You're on my channel. Welcome. If you're not already a subscriber, please do subscribe. We are here today with Ryan, and he is a mechanical engineering postdoc in the National Institute of Standards and Technology. He received his Ph.D. in mechanical and aerospace engineering from Syracuse University in 2017, and currently works on firefighting technology. And alongside that is encouraging professional development of early career researchers. So welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we've had this conversation a few times, a lot of just about YouTube in general and how do you do science communication? How do you do, social media in particular? And so we really wanted to give that opportunity to a wider audience to continue that conversation and then kind of go through some of those repeat questions as well. So Ryan will be moderating a lot of the questions that come in through the chat. So feel free to leave them in the box and he'll bring them up. But for the first 20 to 25 minutes, we'll go through kind of the questions that we're thinking about, and then we'll start addressing some that come up in the chat. So yeah, we can get started.
Yeah, this is a reverse moderator. It's your channel, but I moderate. It's a different dynamic. I like it a lot. So yeah, you and I met probably a couple months ago. I was really gravitated towards the message that you have built with your YouTube channel. So, I mean, just a quick overview. How did that start again?
Yeah, so my channel started in May of this year of 2020, and it was coincided with being shut down, just panicking about, okay, what do I do if all of my conferences are now canceled for the year? And then I guess kind of slowly going virtual, but we had no clue that that was also going to happen.
Right.
And, this is my 5th year of my PhD. I had no way to really get my name out there. I'm not published yet, but I'm working on getting published. And so those were my greatest opportunities for professional development, for talking about the science I spent years working on, and really trying to educate people on my research. And so the idea that I lost that opportunity from this pandemic was kind of weighing heavily on me, especially for the idea of like getting future jobs when I graduate in the fall or in the summer, and just doing outreach and talking about my passion. So that also coincided with the murder of George Floyd, and thinking about just, Black Lives Matter movement and just being a Black science communicator. And I really wanted to be that representative, that voice, and, be a person of color talking about science and showing people that we're here. We are engineers, we're chemists, we're oceanographers, and we're happy to talk about these subjects that there's not enough people in these spaces to do that. So that was like the inspiration idea. And I said, okay, let's do YouTube. And
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's interesting, especially since it's kind of, you have what, 1,000 subscribers now or something like that?
When I started May 28th, I had 4 subscribers, and I think one of them was my mom, and then like my fiance, and then maybe my alternate account. I don't know, and one of my best friends. And so by now, I think it's about 1,080 subscribers from 5 months of being on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, a lot of people, YouTube is so saturated with a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. And I can imagine when you start out, you have a great voice, but how do you have people like me gravitate to that voice? In other words, like, how do you build followers? I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this want to know.
Yeah. So I would say the majority of your followers when you start are your friends and your family. Like, especially for science communication channels, you really have to kind of get your name out there, because the majority of things you're going to see on YouTube are, people trying to be influencers or vlogs. But, science content is not always at the top, but education is creeping up for the algorithm. So really, it's all about talking to your friends, your family, saying, hey, I want to talk about science. I really love it. And I think that this content is also accessible for you and anybody else that you know. And so really knowing your audience, if you've decided I want a YouTube channel only for researchers and scientists, then that's okay, but you may not build as large of a following because people won't understand some of the jargon associated to talking about these subjects. But yeah, really relying on getting your friends and family to support you and share your content is key.
Yeah, I could imagine. But at the same time, too, I mean, YouTube also has metrics that you can evaluate who's watching. Maybe it gives you a little insight into the demographics of the age group. So, I mean, you know, you start recognizing, oh, man, there's somebody from, you know, China that's watching my videos. And then you say, I'm getting more people that aren't my friends and family. And then you want to build on that. You want to build on that momentum. You know, has those metrics been a good insight into building those kind of things and how you gear your video content?
Absolutely. So when I started, I think it was mainly based in the United States, a lot of the people that were watching, and it's slowly been shifting to more of Canada, more of the UK, more of Germany, and then also more of India. So I'm slowly getting, you know, different locations around the world that are starting to watch different parts of my content. And it even, you know, changes by age group. I think the largest age group right now is 25 to 34. That's watching my channel. And then I think the second largest, it's a kind of a battle between right before and after. So I'm getting quite a few undergraduate aged, you know, students for environmental engineering content or student content in particular. So I think it's very helpful for me to know how that's changing over time. And I think that may also be because that I'm not just on YouTube. I'm not just putting videos into the vacuum. I'm also advertising those videos once they're made on, you know, platforms like Twitter to have a larger audience from different parts of the world.
Right. So let's back up a little bit because you talked a little bit about advertising and now we know, you know, you can produce all these videos. So let's go from cradle to grave. Let's talk about idea. So you get the idea. Where do you go from there? And then how does it become a video? And then what do you do after the video is posted? Walk me through it.
Yeah. I can even just go through one of the videos that has the most views. That's the 10 facts that you need to know about microplastics. So that video was me just saying, okay, this is the thing I do. I study plastic. I study microplastics. I've read plenty of papers on this. Let's just go through some of the really interesting things that people need to know on the day-to-day when they're dealing with, you know, being inside their home, with, you know, choosing between a bottled water. And let's just give out those facts that'll be quick and easy for them to understand and that are associated to scientific articles and literature. So I spent about, you know, a few days, I'd say, putting together the articles I thought were very important for the subject, choosing the 10 facts, and then ordering them based off of engaging content. So not just giving them everything that they need to know in the first two, but also giving them things that are say, I didn't know cats like plastic, or like they like to lick plastic, they're attracted to it. So, you know, keeping those facts associated to things that are founded in science, but also engaging. So putting together the script can take a few days, and then also just adding in the funny tidbits like, okay, I know I'm going to talk to the camera for who knows, a couple hours, but what about some funny skits that I can put in? What about, you know, images? Or, you know, there's A-roll and there's B-roll. What are side clips that I can interject in between a video? And so that can add a little bit more time as well, just thinking of this is when I'm going to put in an infographic. Or this is when I'm going to stop and start breathing really heavy so that they can, you know, really think about the fact that they're breathing in microplastics.
Right.
So that process of just filming itself can take a few hours. And then the process of editing and clipping and cutting to make it engaging, to get rid of the ums, the ands, the so's, the, you know, the things that take or detract value from the video. Those things can take as well, probably about 8 to 10 hours of just clipping and cutting.
I could imagine. Yeah, I could imagine. So you talked about some fun stuff to also keep engaging too. I mean, do you ever throw like what do they call them? Dad jokes, you know, like what's the law of salads, coleslaw, you know, things like that to kind of keep people in. Yeah, I had to throw one in there.
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
pretty corny. I'm not gonna lie. I think the thing that was the grabber. So really, you have to also decide in the first 30 seconds for someone to say, I want to keep watching, because a view doesn't
right.
count until 30 seconds have hit. And so I think I had something kind of random and basic when I started, and I was talking to my cousin, who is a Generation Z, and I said, okay, what's catchy, what's funny? And I was sending her different clips, and she's like, well, maybe you should just sprinkle the salt a little bit. Maybe you should do another, clip like that. And so, kind of feeding off of what younger generations might like, what might capture someone's attention. So I said, okay, let me just like throw microplastics into the air, which, I mean, it was kosher salt, but like,
Yeah,
they don't know that. They're just thinking, wow, what is she doing with microplastics in her hand? So really finding things that can catch and say, okay, we need to know more within the first 30 seconds to a minute is key.
yeah, yeah. It's that general shape that you tease something that might be a little bit engaging, and then once you have them, you want them to dive a little bit deeper, and you say, let's take this journey together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that they don't get lost too. If I start talking too much, or, they lose attention because it's way too much jargon, it's easy to
right.
lose them. And so that's one of the things that I rely on when I look at my metrics is how long does it take for someone to stop watching my video? Because if you make videos and you post to YouTube, you have to know that not every single person is going to watch your entire video. Most people are not going to watch your entire video, and that is okay. But really knowing when do they stop losing attention, and is it because of the content, or is it because the human brain just loses interest? So maybe those are the moments when you need to add in a funny scene. Maybe that's the moment when you need to give them the most important fact before they
Right.
hop off and leave. So because you don't want them just to stay, you also want them to get the information that they came to get, so really
Yeah.
taking those things into account.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine a lot of times if you just kind of got into really the technical jargon and that's all you wanted to focus on because that was your goal, there's a limited amount or there's a limited community that you'd be interacting with on a regular basis. Because you would have less people actually viewing your videos, that might disrupt the infamous YouTube algorithm, right? And I'm sure if you really want to improve your viewership, you have to consider the algorithm in some cases. Does that cross your brain? Does that keep you up at night of how can I optimize and really take advantage of this algorithm so I get more followers and more people coming to my channel?
Yeah, I think I've had some experience with that too. I kind of took the algorithm for granted when I started. I said, okay, just get out as many videos as possible. I'll know by 35 videos exactly what my brand is going to look like and what kind of viewers I'm looking for, and just, how am I going to brand my content based off of just getting enough videos out. But I think what I was also missing was the fact that like you have to add the appropriate title with the right keywords. You have to, in your description, add enough keywords as well in that description to get YouTube to pick that up. You have to make sure that your viewers are watching, a certain amount of time, because there's impression rates that are associated to it. So I think that they said somewhere around the algorithm determines what people watch about 70% of the time.
Wow.
And I think Pew Research said that like American YouTube users will watch, I think like 81% of the time they'll watch what's recommended to them. So it's not just like, okay, let me get out to my social circle and hope they all watch it. It's really saying, how do I make my video pop up in the top 10 or the top 20 when they search microplastic? And so really thinking about, okay, how many keywords do I need to add into the description? What are the correct ones, based off of those like tag calculators? And that makes a huge difference, because I had a few videos on what does it mean to be an environmental engineer? What is it like to major in environmental engineering? And they had close to no tags when I started. And then I kind of started doing a little bit more digging. And then I realized that I was missing a lot of those important things. And so I started adding them in, I think, August or September. And those videos are now almost in the top three, top four of just kind of explosion, not just because, the
Woohoo.
timing, right? Everyone
Yeah.
wants to know what it means to be an environmental engineer.
Right.
Uh, it's not just the timing, but it's also the fact that those tags are now picking up. I think because I didn't have those, people were not able to see that that was an option for them as well. So tagging is super important. The way you make your thumbnails to engage people to click, what your impression rates are. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, in likes and comments. So YouTube is paying a lot of attention to comments. It's not just, oh, great video again, like with my alternate, my second YouTube account. But it's like, I really enjoyed that fact that you made on that microplastics are in my clothing, or I really liked your tip on washing with cold. Putting in details into those comments makes a difference, or having suggestions on new videos that you want to see. Those will help the YouTube algorithm say, okay, people are actually engaging with the content. And then for me, it's also make sure that I have to comment back, because they want to see that I'm engaging with my community. And that will also help the YouTube algorithm.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting how that all works. I mean, for some people, it's a little bit of a mystery, but it seems like you're starting to get a real good idea of how to make it work in your favor. Reminds me a lot about like publications. We're both scientists, and we do journal publications and go to conferences and do posters. The typical things that people do in science, and that's how we communicate to our communities and our research fields, and that's how we make contributions. And I mean, you and I both know that typically when you submit a paper to a journal, there's an impact factor associated with that journal, in which says, there's a certain number of citations and reads. And also, there's ResearchGate, was another social media outlet for scientists. And what I'm trying to get to is, it's interesting about viewership and YouTube and citations and reads with publications. It's similar, but the interesting thing is, you start a YouTube channel that has 1,000 subscribers, meaning every single time you put out something new, you have 1,000 subscribers. But now you put out a paper, you're not going to reach as much. So when we start talking about impact, it's almost like that word in the science community, with more YouTube videos and things like this being put out, it's changing. Would you agree with that statement?
I do. I think about that a lot. The fact that I could publish a paper now and there could be, 12 citations at the most if I don't have enough headway or people to know me about it. But the other thing is just like audience. Who's going to be able to reach, read those papers if they're hidden behind what's called a paywall, which means as soon as you click on that link, it says you need to be associated to an institution who has subscribership to this journal, or you can pay $59.99 to read 7 pages that you don't understand, or you may have a vague understanding of, but it's just kind of not relatable for every person. And so there's always kind of that understanding of, okay, a lot of researchers use taxpayer dollars to do their work, to do their science, and then they communicate it to other researchers. And then so it just stays, centered around the community. And so I think that YouTube and just other social media in general have a much broader audience. They're allowed to see the content that we're working on. They're able to really understand, what does it mean to be a scientist? What does it mean to do this kind of work? And what are the implications of some of these publications? And so this can be a positive reinforcement loop if we're saying, okay, I'm going to talk about a paper that was just published, like the microdose of microplastic episodes that I do, where I say, I'm going to pick 4 papers and I'm going to really try and explain what they found and what that means for other people. And so they don't have to click on the link to read the paper, but I provide them that information. So if they want to, but also giving them associated news articles that they can read that are more accessible to that content. And so that's still great for them, because if there's a researcher that clicks on a video, they say, okay, I want to read that actual paper. Great. If it's just someone else that just really likes the science, they say, okay, I'm going to read the news article. That's great. So everyone gets, their content. And then you're also spreading people to new ideas. If they don't catch that paper on their feed reader, now they catched it on a video.
Yeah, one thing you touched upon that actually I want to discuss a little bit more is the idea that there's a lot of YouTube channels out there. And I think one thing that I've noticed a lot more is credibility in science. All right. We work at least 5, 6, 7 years to get our PhD. And we get to this status that we are a doctorate and an expert in some fields that applies, right? But anybody can start a YouTube channel and anybody can kind of do these experiments. Where do you think credibility plays in all of this? Do you think it's important? I mean, we want everybody to kind of be engaged with science, but I mean, how do you stress that you're a credible source of information in a world where misinformation is so easy to get?
I think one of the things that I like to do pretty often is tell people, hey, I am an environmental engineer. I am a PhD candidate. I am studying, microplastics for this many years, really trying to add those components in before I start going into details so that I can try and add a little bit of that credibility. And then really just saying, hey, you don't have to just trust the words that I'm saying. Here are the actual articles associated to the topic that I'm covering. And so if there's things that you say, I don't know, let me go to the description page and get more information. So I think those are really key points of than just someone talking at you and you're saying, well, where is that coming from? Where are you getting your sources? Where are your facts? How can I check, what's coming from you? And I think that's something that needs to stay, true for at least my channel for the duration if I'm covering certain science topics in particular.
Right. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking about too is, some scientists don't know everything. Actually, a lot of scientists don't know everything. They're experts in their individual fields, but it's interesting when you ask, let's say Bill Nye the Science Guy about something that he's not an expert in, but they kind of say, you're the science guy. Literally, it's in his name. You should know kind of this answer. Do you think that's kind of an issue too of people not getting this perception of maybe scientists just don't know the answer and they're not the expert in everything? What do you think?
I do think that can get easily lost if they say, okay, I want you to give me advice on everything under the sun. Like I think I tell people sometimes on my channel that I'm also an environmental analytical chemist and that I study chemicals. And so yeah, I can talk about them if I've done enough work looking at them and like actually doing some research. But if you go up to me the next day and say, hey, I found this ingredient on my label, can you tell me if that's bad or not? I'm not going to immediately have an answer for it. So I think that those are definitely loopholes or issues that can come up. But I think just being upfront and honest about it and saying, hey, like, I don't always know everything, but I'm happy to look into it with you or share articles if I find them. And, I'm not your one-stop source for everything.
Right. So one thing a lot of people do to start a YouTube channel now is their goal, I guess, is they want to monetize their videos. They want to get advertisers. They want to get a billion followers, not a billion, but 1 million followers. They want to get money from doing this. Do you see that as a goal?
I do. I think that this process of just like making videos and spreading content is something that I really enjoy. I'm really passionate about, but I also want it to kind of pay forward in a way. Like I'm also building video making skills. I'm building graphic designing skills, putting together scripts. I'm interpreting science. And those are no different than if I decided to go work for, a company that actually did that kind of stuff. So monetization, I think, is definitely something that's going to hopefully come down the road, but it is not an easy process. If anybody off the street says, I want to make a YouTube channel and I'm going to make money, I don't know, a month in, it's going to be very difficult with that expectation. And so really making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. If it doesn't pan out, is really what matters most, because this has still been very, very helpful for my career and for getting my name out, saying, hey, I study plastic. People can go to these videos now and say, this is her personality. This is how much she knows. This is how she interprets data. So I think that even if it doesn't monetize, I think it still has rewarded me, 1,000-fold. So it's, yeah, you really got to weigh out what is your purpose when you create this channel.
Right. So let's fast forward. All right. Let's say 5 years, you're making money. on these videos. Maybe it probably is going to be sooner. You get 1,000 in 5 months, probably 1 million in 5 years. Who knows? But let's say that, you know, you get to this point of your videos are monetized, you're getting advertisers. Maybe it's not the full income, but you're getting supplemental income from this. But then all of a sudden, you put out a video and you lose followers or subscribers. And that does happen to some people. They put out a video of conversation in which, for some reason, it takes away monetization of these channels. And I can see some people say, well, I got to get people in the seats. So I got to compromise a little bit. I gotta, you know, still change it up a little bit. But a lot of times science is sometimes dry, it's slow, maybe it's not as appealing to some people. So, you know, is there limitations on that? Can you stick to moral values that I think your channel is founded in? Or do you think eventually you'll have to compromise?
You know, I think this came up today, actually. So I was reading a little bit about monetization or the algorithm, and they said that if you put out certain kinds of content, I think early in March, they were demonetizing channels that were talking about COVID-19 and where it was and how it was spreading. And they were just kind of like taking away their channel and not allowing them to publish videos. And I think they still do that for hand sanitizer too. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm working on a skit on harmful chemicals in hand sanitizer. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean that I can't publish this video, even though that this may be important content for someone? So yeah, these are things that are already kind of coming to mind of, well, am I limiting my content for the sake of, you know, the fact that maybe my YouTube channel won't exist if I put this out, or I will no longer be able to ever make any kind of money off of this. So yeah, I definitely think there are compromises and that can be a limitation. But I think if, as long as you're kind of trying to stay true to the science and maybe staying out of the things that are a little bit closer to conspiracy theories, then maybe things can still be very, very helpful and very good. Especially since most of my stuff is centered around plastics. I don't see that having to compromise in that realm or in environmental engineering.
Right. Right. And I think sometimes actually that probably comes back to credibility too, because you could probably say, I am a scientist. I am reporting what I'm observing. Right. I mean, science is just, we're reporting the observations and drawing conclusions from said observations. So yeah, it's very interesting. So let's say you're talking to some people who want to start their own YouTube channel. If you had to give them some advice, what would it be?
I would say that quality video is probably going to be the most important, and quality, just like how you put your video together. So really just getting a good editing software. I use Adobe Premiere Pro. Spend a few days learning how to use it. I use LinkedIn Learning for that process because I think that makes or breaks the channel is, you know, your video production, and along with just like kind of quality, and then thinking about what is your channel, what is your branding, and what kind of videos are you going to put out. So really design your next, 20 to 30 videos, set a schedule, and then kind of readjust based off of how your subscribers are responding to those videos, or if they're adding important information in the comments saying, this would also be super helpful. Well, okay, well, maybe let me just put this right in between, this theme or that theme, and bump this up a few months. So really plan out all the videos that you think you're going to make, and really see that, is this a sustainable channel idea? Is this going to last me more than a year? Because it's going to take at least probably that to even think about monetization. And then think about, if you are, if your channel is about bees, are you going to talk about bees for the rest of your life? Is that your plan? Make sure that you choose your brand, your image, your channel based off of things that you are going to stay with for years to come, which is why I have my channel as my name, because it's allowed to evolve and change with me. So right. I think those are a few of them.
Yeah, no, I could imagine I see even a lot of, at the academic level, a lot of labs will start like a Twitter account or an Instagram feed, and then it dies. And it doesn't always bode well for the lab if you have this thing that just doesn't get updated. People do look at that. When was the last time somebody posted? Oh, 2012. Interesting. So yeah, it's to be vigilant. Is commendable that you have that vision that's not only beyond 6 months but a year and beyond. That's amazing. That's really amazing.
Well, staying persistent and consistently posting videos is definitely a big thing that can be an issue.
Right. Right. So I think I've talked a lot. Is there anybody that has any questions in the comment section? Feel free to jump in at any single time. I do have more questions. I never run out. That's just my nature. But I think this is also a good opportunity for people to kind of engage with us on the channel.
Yeah, happy to hear any of them. I'm happy to talk about whatever kind of pops to mind. I can show whatever from the YouTube algorithm, even just software graphic design tools that I've used, whatever works. Let's see.
Actually, Bryson Walker has a question. Hi, Bryson. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right.
Yeah.
Who's your biggest supporter?
Oh, he's so biased. That's my brother. No, I mean, he's the one who asked my brother. Okay, so I think that that's a trick question, but I would probably still say my mom. I'm pretty sure that she plays the playlist over and over again for my little sister, Gabby. So maybe it's a double combo of my mom and Gabby. But yeah, I'd say that most of my family is really kind of tying because they've really been super supportive and they want to see the content and they've really worked to continue to support me in this goal of being a science communicator. So I think You're all amazing. And my friends are super amazing too.
Do you think that's a really important thing within the science community itself, is just having that support?
Absolutely. Even just past talking about science, but it can be hard if you don't get a lot of views, if you don't see, all the work that you put in, like, okay, I put a few days to a few weeks into making one video and it sunk, or, it did not get the right comments that I was expecting. Well, I still have this great support group of my family who's, seen the content, who's responded to it, who's given me suggestions for new content to keep me going in that right direction. So I do think that having a special group of people that really see your vision and really can say, hey, like this one didn't hit the mark, or this might be a really great suggestion to try out, because I think they're going to be the first line of people saying, here's how we can better help and support your channel grow.
Right. And I mean, this is probably not the first time somebody's taken interest in starting their own YouTube channel. And I'm sure people have reached out to you, maybe not even the capacity of starting a YouTube channel, but just getting interested in science in general, and then getting interested in maybe going to grad school. Do you have any stories, anecdotes to tell us?
Yeah, so I've had quite a few Black women who say, oh my gosh, there's another Black woman talking about being an environmental engineer. I want to do that. I want to get an undergrad degree in it. I want to get a master's. I want to get a Ph.D. And like, I feel like I can, ask those questions and see what is her experience like. And so that has been super rewarding for me for like a mentorship aspect, because I don't see that many other Black female engineers or environmental engineers in particular. And so being able to say, hey, we're here. I'm happy to talk to you about this. These are the programs that I know that are really great at this. Or yeah, maybe you don't have the background in engineering yet, but these are some of the great classes you should take, because I think I have a unique perspective of coming from marine science and then switching into an engineering degree. And there was a year or so of just kind of adjusting to that and preparing for it before I applied to grad school. And so I think that people can, they really enjoy that content, and they really want to say, like, can I talk to you for 30 minutes about what I'm thinking about? Can I ask you what you think about Duke, or, how I might fit in with that? And so those are really some of the other rewarding aspects of having this channel. I think there have been questions also on, hey, I also want to make a YouTube channel. I think quite a few people have said that, like, oh, I really wanted to do that, but I just, I didn't know how, I didn't get started. And, I think people they come to their own time with deciding whether they want to do that, or if they want to do Instagram or TikTok. Like, you can, take your own time with what makes the most sense for if you want to talk about science or, what your life is like when you're studying to be, an engineering PhD or, you know, but yeah, it's really just like, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. I'm open to sharing how my story has been. And, I just want to cheer everybody else on. So
Right.
there's always room for more science YouTube channels. There's always more room for, sharing your experience as a person in this realm. So yeah, I'm always happy to help.
I mean, actually, there's a couple questions in the chat, but somebody asked a question that I think is really relates to what we just talked about. What keeps you motivated? Is it those interactions that you have? Is it just doing things in general? I mean, because I know as a scientist, yeah, it's tough.
I've definitely hit some walls, especially because I'm trying to finish a PhD, hopefully this summer, and trying to stay on top of research and classes. But I think that the motivation sometimes can come from the comments that I get of like, wow, I had no clue about this. Thank you for sharing this information. It can come from just the idea that there are more people actually viewing this content or sharing it with other people. Or even just getting a message from my friends or family that said, okay, that was really great. Like you're improving as a science communicator. And so the fact that like other people are seeing the progress that I'm kind of building over time, and I'm kind of starting to notice it as well, the ability for me to be a little bit more comfortable with speaking in front of a camera, which is, for me, it's still the public. Anybody can be watching this channel. So
right.
I think the aspect of the fact that I'm growing so much is also a motivator. And the fact that there's plenty of content for me to continue talking about, because people are really publishing a lot on these topics of plastic pollution, of contaminants in our water, in the things that we're wearing or drinking from. So there's always things that I think are very important for other people to hear about and then share what they mean. So those are definitely motivating factors.
So what do you think is the hardest thing about building a brand? And that's not my question. That's Bryson Walker. We have to credit where credit is due.
Okay, those are great questions. I think, there's there's definitely some challenges, just like staying consistent to it, not veering off topic too much, or recognizing when certain aspects of the brand are not what people want to see. That's not content that they're actually interested in. So kind of adapting your brand to the times can be a little bit difficult, because if it's like, I just want to talk about plastic every single day. Okay, well, not everyone wants to see plastic content every single day. And trying not to pigeonhole yourself. So those are things that can be kind of difficult for a brand, and thinking about, okay, if I'm going to talk about being sustainable, I can't, when the day that I monetize, start trying to sell brands that are not doing their part for being ethical or sustainable. Those are things that like I still think about, or like if I'm going to post a video, it's being very cognizant of, okay, well, how does this relate to the actual content that I'm putting out? If I'm saying we need to be better about single-use plastic, and in the back of my video I'm drinking from a bottled water, well, does that make a lot of sense unless it's a skit? So thinking about like, okay, if I'm putting out this content, if I'm putting out this person of this is something that you should be thinking about, making sure that you're staying consistent for your life as well. So I think those are things that can be difficult to think about, but really, as long as you're putting out content that you're passionate about and that you are a consumer and agree with, then that's really the most important part.
Yeah,
not adjusting yourself.
Right. So one more question that we have, U of T of Trash Team asks, what are some strategies you use when planning out your content, i.e. what topics you want to cover and when?
So the when piece is always important, especially with timing. When I do content specifically for students, it's saying, okay, well, if they're applying to grad school or undergrad, I want to make sure that there's content that shows up before they're applying. If it's, I'm going to do every other video is going to be plastic, every other video is going to be a chemical contaminant in your consumer products. So I usually will plan out 5 to 10 videos in advance, say, okay, these are the dates that I'm going to release them. Pardon me. And then start doing the research. So I have to kind of anticipate how long each video is going to be, whether it's going to be between 6 minutes or it's going to be 12 minutes, because those can require a longer period of time to plan, because I have to do enough research. I have to really think about scripting, and it's just going to take a really long time to edit down a video to the way that I like and include things that are engaging. So I keep that in mind when I'm planning, is how long the video is expected to be, how much content I'm planning to add on top of just saying the words I need to say. And then some other things, even just the day that it drops. So I do look at the analytics associated to when are my videos watched the most, because that's super important. I think usually right now I'm dropping videos on Thursdays. And so I've looked at the past 7-8 weeks, maybe 10 of videos that have been dropped. And I said, okay, well, how many views have I gotten every day? And I know that between Tuesday and Thursday are when people watch my videos the most, and then Wednesday in between. So really readjusting when I want to drop those videos. Maybe I'll start dropping them on Tuesdays instead, so that there's more time in between for Wednesday, Thursday to get more views. And then I know that if I try to drop a video on Friday because I'm behind, then I can't expect a ton of views, because Saturday, Sunday are my lowest points of getting views. So there's definitely a few things you have to think about, but really scripting is key for video content. So I write out the information that I'm gonna say, and then I also write out, this is when I'm gonna cut scene to something funny. This is what I'm going to add, the Mari that's distrust the science. And, this is when I'm going to put in some funny skit. So I kind of try and plan everything that I see in the vision ahead of time before I get in front of the camera and start doing it, because then you'll just be stuck there forever. Or you'll have to go back and put on the same outfit 2 days later when you say, oh, this could have been super funny. I don't want to have to do that.
So is there a collection of outfits that you have that are like, do not eat mustard stained foods, so that I don't have to wash these clothes in between days?
I did buy a lab coat for my house, for whenever I decide to do certain science videos, especially for like these microplastic series that I'm trying to start. So that's probably one that I'm just like, that's only for videos. But I think everything else is kind of flexible with my wardrobe, since this is what I wear.
So I have a very interesting question about YouTube in general and just communicating, because you have live, which we have a chat going on, which is up here in case people are wondering what I keep looking at. It's not myself in the mirror, but anywho, YouTube can be seen as being not as interactive as people hope when you want to start a discussion. It's very, here's the information, watch the video content. And then you have this kind of delayed metric of evaluation, and maybe you have a direct message that's the chat. That can be challenging when you're communicating really complex ideas to a general audience who don't have that in-depth knowledge like you have. So how do you do that? How do you kind of take this really complex idea, and I don't want to say boil it down, but start teasing out these threads that people can grasp onto, that pulls them in to a deeper dive into understanding this content?
Yeah, I think it kind of relates a lot back to when I started making posters and like activity, conference presentations. I think I started doing research my second year of undergrad. And so I was learning the process of being able to communicate with a variety of audiences. And then I always kind of had some family member at one point being there at my poster. And so I've been kind of spending a few years just kind of practicing with people who don't know these subjects and saying, okay, did this make sense? And I even had cousins that would look at my poster and I'd say, okay, well, what does this poster mean? I explained it to you, and they would break it down and, repeat it back to me. And I'd say, okay, well, this is the content that didn't make sense. This is what they missed. So I think it is an art of practice. It is an art of communicating with other people around you that don't understand that subject. I think if you surround yourself with a bunch of scientists, that can be great, but making sure that you have a really diverse group of people that don't always understand the content, or do, and say, hey, I think that you really didn't explain this part right, is going to be key for kind of boiling down concepts. But I really just try to say, okay, well, what is the one sentence I can say about a paper? How do I boil that down and say, okay, this is the main point? And is that catchy? Does it also say why it matters? So you have to say what they found and how does that apply to anybody else? So I think that key part at the end is probably how you can make it more relatable and a little less jargony.
Well, do you think there's subjects or certain sciences that just can't fit into a 5-minute video on YouTube?
Mm.
And that's not just me asking. Relaxation
Yeah.
Plus wants to know too. So again, credit where credit is due. We're scientists. We've got to make sure we cite our sources.
I think if Neil deGrasse Tyson can explain how any part of all of astrophysics, I think that there is no limits to how science and math can be communicated. It may take a little bit longer than 5 minutes, depending on the subject, but I think that we have a duty to try and make things understandable to people, and in trying to find real world examples. I think that's probably one of the most annoying parts of math sometimes is, oh my gosh, this is a long worded problem and I have to figure out the answer to it. But that long worded problem is the reason why we're doing this math, because there's applications to it. And so I do. I think that there's always some way that we can try and explain science to other people.
Right. Right. So we talked a little bit about we talked a lot about how your YouTube channel has evolved over the past several months. Has your science changed because of the YouTube videos?
I'd say that the science hasn't changed, but I think I've added a little bit more of higher education into my videos. I didn't realize that there were going to be, younger people that said, hey, I want to know more about environmental engineering. I want to know more about how math intensive it is. Do you code? Is there modeling involved? And so I kind of readjusted that based off of the feedback that I was getting from earlier videos, because there were a group of people that were just really invested in learning more about that. And I initially didn't think that there was as much interest in it, and I'm happy to talk about it. So I haven't changed content in a way that takes away value from what I want to talk about, because these are things that all make me very excited, and I'm really happy to just kind of share my story. So it may still continue to evolve. It may start being a little bit more vlogs of just, this is what it means to be a first-year PhD, a fifth-year PhD, or this is, how my dissertation is going, or, this is what it means to be 6 months out from defending a dissertation. And wow, this is crazy.
So one thought that came to mind, I know that some people do invite other guests onto the show because they want to capture not only their voice, but a wider perspective to really flesh out a general idea. Is that on the horizon anytime soon? Any special guests?
I mean, you're a special guest already. So
I guess. My mom says I'm special. So
I actually started thinking about this yesterday. So I gave a lecture on microplastics to a class, and they asked me about what are the environmental justice aspects to microplastic exposure, or is there any research in that? And I realized that that's an area that I'm sorely lacking in. It's an area that I think that people need to know about. As far as when you think about risk, you have to think about how much exposure you're getting in comparison to others. And I just don't think that we've covered that subject. And so when I brought this up to my other larger social media platforms like Twitter, I got a lot of really great feedback around it, and people that were interested or had done some anti-colonial work around plastic pollution in science. And so I thought maybe that's a great idea to bring some of those people to my channel to say, hey, let's have a conversation about what's sorely lacking in this area of research that is still relatable to anybody that's going to hop on the live and say, okay, these are areas that people don't know yet, but this is something maybe I should be a little cautious of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think that adding some guest appearances is going to be something that I'm planning for, and it didn't occur to me until probably yesterday that this could be an avenue that I could pursue.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that also comes to mind too is I know the last couple months of my PhD pursuit, I barely slept. I mean, I barely had any time to do anything. I was teaching, I was doing all the stuff, and I was trying to get my dissertation written. And how do you manage time? I mean, time management has to be so key to everything, right?
Yeah. I do think that it's going to be a challenge closer to when I'm doing, the final defense, writing the last parts of my dissertation. So I'm already kind of planning in a little bit of time where I say, okay, I'm either going to take a month off, or I am going to spend a certain amount of time producing enough videos so that it will stay scheduled to run. But, it's really just acknowledging when things are feasible or not. I've definitely taken breaks where I think right before my bioplastics video, it took 3 weeks for me to put out content when it's usually every other week or so. And so it can get ahead of me. It can get challenging, but I think as long as you say, this is the goal, do your best, and it's okay if you don't meet it, because you are already where you are now and you're doing great. So yeah, I think as long as I'm able to kind of set a schedule for myself that's feasible and say, okay, these are the kind of videos that I'm going to make that are a little bit easier on myself if things are too busy. And they're just, maybe conversational, sharing my story when I know that there's finals during that week, or, okay, this one's going to be a little bit more intense, but I'm already studying that subject. So I'll just take extra notes for the video in particular. So I think a lot of the videos have already fed into information that I'm working to attain, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting thing. Is a lot of people sometimes see opportunity, but they say, oh, you know what, that doesn't really gel with what I'm trying to do now. I think the trick is finding it to kind of all blend together and benefit everything. So, yeah. One question that I had that I think a lot of people are very interested in knowing: will you broadcast your defense on YouTube Live?
Short answer, yes. I'm thinking about doing that. I'm thinking about also adding some kind of live captioning to make things a little bit more accessible. But it's also a conversation I need to have with my committee as well, because I don't know if they're comfortable with their face on YouTube. So yeah, I think at least for the presentation aspect, I'm probably gonna do a YouTube Live for it. If people want to watch, maybe they'll enjoy it. Maybe it'll get lost in the sauce because it's real jargony.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, if people want to watch it, then yeah, everyone's welcome. I think the Zoom might be a little bit more difficult.
I mean, it's such an intimidating day for a lot of PhDs that, you just don't want to add more stress to it. But I would like to make the argument that since I grew up in Central New York and I also got my PhD at Syracuse, I had the whole thing catered by Wegmans. And I'm like, Wegmans was at my defense. So I'm a huge Wegmans fan. Anybody will tell you that. Yeah, go Wegmans. I would get a tattoo of Wegmans if I could, but my wife says no. So
oh my gosh. That store, man. So, I think that this is definitely going to be helpful for people to kind of say, okay, if we're all virtual, if hopefully next year we're going to have a vaccine out running, we're going to be able to be a little bit more out, but they're saying that we might have any semblance of normalcy until 2022, and I'm definitely trying to graduate before then. So if things make the most sense where it's people want to watch it virtually, if y'all want to support me, I'm happy to provide that information. I might be sweating. I might be a little nervous, but, I'm happy to have you there.
Yeah. And one thing that you really demonstrated, especially with your YouTube channel, especially this conversation, is your resilience and adaptability to different circumstances. And speaking as somebody who's made it to the other side, that is huge. That is such a huge trait to have. And you should be very proud of that.
Oh man, I think that's the one thing my PhD taught me, was just to keep going. because
Yeah.
it is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's probably what helps me keep making YouTube videos too, I guess. So yeah, if you want to grow more motivation, go get a PhD.
So
Any last, I think, questions? We have 5 minutes. I haven't actually been looking at the chat, but I'm happy. Oh, wow. What are the other things? Did I lose you, Ryan?
no, I'm still here.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm just quiet for once. Sometimes people find that odd.
Are there good personal injury cases? What? I don't know if I can explain this, but I got freezer burn. Does that count? I think 2 weeks ago on some liquid nitrogen. I don't know if that's really going to be a personal injury case because I'm still fine. The other ones are.
Yeah, I think we covered most of them. I think there's one more question that I think that actually might be a good way to conclude this conversation is, I mean, do you think that anybody can pursue science communication? Do you think that it's out of grasp for some people who just want to stay in the lab and just do lab work and publish journals? And what do you think? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've even had people ask me as well about like, what does it mean how do you get into this as a career? Do I need a master's degree? Do I need a PhD to do it? I do think that anybody can talk about science. I think that if you are passionate about a subject and that you're willing to put time into learning about it and understanding what the research is in that area, that anyone can really explain those concepts to somebody else. I do think for careers, it can be a lot easier if you have some sort of like degree in even just a bachelor's or master's, particularly in science, to kind of go into that career aspect of I want to be a science writer, or I want to start putting together videos for universities talking about research, because to really kind of talk about what research is happening, it's a lot easier if you've had that experience or if you've actually been through the process of science, because then you have that a little bit more of that eye to see, okay, well, this is what they were kind of missing in the research, and this is, maybe why I'm a little bit more hesitant to say such and such. Like I read papers on uptake of plastic into fruits and vegetables, and I say, okay, well, they don't have the information that I think is important to say that this is true or makes a lot of sense. And so maybe we need a few more papers in this field before I start talking about this in more detail, because they're missing some key analysis. So I do think that having some information or experience in this area will make you a better science communicator and allow you to be a little bit more critical of science and actually explain it to other people. But the world is open to anybody who's passionate and who's interested. Yeah. And so, yeah, this was great.
Yeah. No, it was a pleasure talking to you. I've really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the past couple months. So I can't wait to see where you go next.
I know. I guess I'm in the midst of planning another live soon enough, so we can talk about some plastic stuff. But yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for moderating. This makes it a lot easier to drive the conversation and not have to have me check on the chat all the time. And thank you all for tuning in. If you have other questions, you can post them in the comments, or you can just reach out to me personally. But yeah, I think that's going to conclude our live stream. All right. So I'm going to